Do you know what it feels like that you're trying so hard to work on your relationship and you're trying to invest into your marriage and you're trying to give and do for your husband and you just feel like it's unappreciated or you feel like it's not even seen? Well, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the 5 love languages because it might just be that you weren't talking in a language that your husband understands. It might just be that he's not talking in a language that you understand. And that's why you can't even understand each other's love for each other. I know what that's like. I felt like that too. And so has my husband. And so have so many other moms that I have worked with and spoken with. So in today's episode, I am going to explain the idea of the 5 love languages and give really simple, practical ways that you can show love in each one of these languages. Also, I will share with you a great hack on how to find what is your primary love language, and you'll also hear my small little change and take on how to understand what love languages are. You can also get a link to hear the audiobook down below of 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, which I highly, highly recommend if you have never read or heard this book before. So this is not one you want to miss. Hang on right after the intro. Here we go. Hey, and welcome to the New Mama Marriage Bliss Show. I want to help you get out of the overwhelming distance and guide you to reconnect to yourself and to your husband. You know you want things to be different, but you're probably not sure how to make it happen. Well, Mama, you're in the right place. Here we will dive into all the things you need to start loving your life and relationship and start living like soulmates and not roommates anymore. We will dive into motherhood, marriage, communication, holistic inspiration, and practical hacks and tips. Mama, I believe that transformation and deep connection await you. Hi, I'm Aliza Saeed, proud mama and grateful wife, and the Mama Marriage Coach. You too can turn your mess into magic. Come on, Mama, and let's do it together. Hey there, mamas, and welcome back to the New Mama Marriage Bliss Show. I am Aliza Saeed, the Mama Marriage Coach, and I am passionate about helping new mamas or mamas of young kids reconnect to themselves and to their husbands and really start living with love and joy and purpose and just enjoying life. So if you are down for that, you're in the right place. Today we are going to be talking about the 5 love languages. The 5 Love Languages is based on the best-selling book by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages, which if you haven't read it yet, definitely go and do that. Or if you would rather hear it being read to you, I have recently fell in love with audiobooks. So if you would like to listen to it, you can go to audible.com and you can even get a free trial. So I have a link right down at the bottom. You can click on that and go to audible.com, sign up for your free 30-day trial. I highly, highly recommend this book. So what is the 5 love languages? So the 5 love languages came from years of Gary Chapman's work as a marriage counselor, as a marriage therapist. Basically what it is he was seeing couples coming in with really good intentions and they really loved each other, but something wasn't working. Each one would come in and say, my spouse doesn't love me. If they loved me, they would do X, Y, and Z. And the other one would say, he doesn't really love me. If he loved me, he would do X, Y, and Z. And each one felt so unloved, maybe unappreciated, and just like there was something not working. And he said many of these couples really wanted to make their relationship work. They really wanted to have a great relationship, but something wasn't working. And what he found is that really, love is not this one thing that you can just do or say or be in order for the other person to feel loved. What he learned is that really there are 5 different ways to express love and to be loved. So if I am telling someone in Chinese how much I love them, and that person doesn't understand Chinese, it doesn't matter how many times I tell them or how many times I explain to them in Chinese how much I love them, they're not going to get it because it's not their language. They don't get it. They don't know what I'm trying to express to them. But if I speak in their own language, then they will be able to understand what it is I'm saying, what it is I'm trying to express to them. So it might not be an English-Chinese kind of issue, but there are 5 different love languages that if we don't speak in our spouse's language, then essentially what we're doing is we're not going to be able to fill up their love tank. Now, what is a love tank? Gary Chapman talks about how usually we think about it with kids, that when a child has their emotional tank filled, then they'll be able to really develop in the best way, and they'll be able to grow up with a healthy mind, body, soul, and be able to really prosper. His love tank is empty, and he's not filled up with that love that he needs. Then usually that's when you'll see a child misbehaving, because his emotional tank, his love tank is empty, and he needs to start crying out to try and get it to be filled up. So we're not going to talk about parenting and education and how to fill up our child's love tank, and if any way of them screaming out for us to fill up the love tank, is that okay? How should we respond to that? We're not going into that today. What we're going to be talking about is with our spouse. Your spouse has a primary language that he likes to talk his love in, and he also really can understand you expressing your love towards him in that language. Let me give you an example. I once had a client who was very, very insulted by her husband. She came into the session and she said, "You'll never believe how disappointing my day was." It was her husband's birthday, and she put in so much thought into what gift she was going to get him. And she went to some special store to get him this special cup, and she engraved his name in it, and she was so excited to give her husband this cup on his birthday. And she gives it to him, and he looks it over and says, "Oh, thank you. That's so nice." And then continues on their day, and they start talking about something else. And she says to me, he didn't even recognize it again. He shoved it on the shelf and he didn't even look at it again. Doesn't he appreciate what I did for him? Doesn't that mean anything to him? And he even said something like, "Oh, it must have been so expensive." But she was so upset and so insulted that he wasn't recognizing the gift that she gave to him. Now, did he mean badly? Was he really being unappreciative or not recognizing how hard she worked for this gift? Maybe. But I think maybe what was really going on is she was talking one love language and he was talking a complete different one. So they weren't talking in the same language. He didn't mean badly. She wanted to really express her love, and he wasn't seeing it as that in the same way that she was, because they just weren't talking the same language. Now, why is this idea so important, especially for parents? Once we have children, so it seems like there's less of everything. We have much less time to actually be together. We have less energy by the end of the day. We have less money to invest just in ourselves. It seems like there's less of everything. So the way that I see it is not that there's less of everything, but that we have to be so much more focused on what we do have. We are called to turn to quality over quantity. So if I have a certain amount of time or a certain amount of money that I can now invest into my marriage or any other resource, I'm going to have to use that time, money, energy, whatever it is, in the best way for our relationship. And when I know exactly what my love language is and what my spouse's love language is, then I can use the resources that I have in the best way possible for our relationship. We are going to go over the 5 love languages now, and I want to say that I am going to be explaining the love languages, and I'm going to be talking to you as the wife and how you can give and fill up your spouse's love tank. I'm not talking about what he should do and how he should make you happy or how he should fill up your love tank, because I believe that you need to be the change that you want to see in your relationship. And I also believe that when you give, you love so much more. So even if the other person is not speaking exactly in your love language, you start talking their own. Start talking their language. Start giving. Because once you start creating that energy in the home of giving, of loving, of thinking about the other person, of waking up in the morning and saying to myself, what are 2 things that I could do for my spouse today? It creates this energy in the home that everybody wants to be in that energy. Everybody wants to be a part of that. So once you start giving and once you start creating that love and the love tank starts getting filled up, everybody's going to want to be part of that momentum. Now, obviously, we shouldn't do it in order to get back, but really in a humble, genuine place, want to give to our spouse. And once we give, we love so much more. So let's go through the 5 love languages. The first love language is acts of service. In the classic movie, The Fiddler on the Roof, the husband says to his wife, "Do you love me?" And she says to him, "Do I what?" He says, "Do you love me?" And she says to him, "Do I love you?" She says, "For 25 years, I've washed your clothes, I've cooked your meals, cleaned your house, given your children, milked the cow, and now you're talking about love?" And then again he says, "But I want to know, do you love me? Your father said we'd learn to love each other. And now I'm asking you, do you love me?" And she says, "I'm your wife." He says, I know, but do you love me?" And she says, "Do I love him? For 25 years, I've lived with him. I fought with him. I've starved with him. For 25 years, my bed is his. If that's not love, then what is?" And for Golda in this movie, the wife, her love language was probably acts of service. Because when she says to him, "What do you mean, do I love you? Look at what I'm doing for you. I wash your clothes. I cook your meals. I clean your house. I milk your cow. Look at all these things that I do for you." And that's her way of saying, "I love you." Because people that speak in the language of acts of service, then the way that they love is that they serve someone. I remember in the beginning of our marriage when my husband would compliment me, he would compliment me on like, "Thank you so much for washing the dishes and for putting back the laundry," or for like all different things of service that to me they seemed like really shallow. Like, is that really all you could see? Is that all that matters to you? And slowly we learned that his love language is acts of service. So for him, when he's saying those things, it's not just him saying, "Thank you for putting back the dishes," as a superficial technical detail. What he's saying is, "Thank you so much for expressing your love to me in the way that I speak love." And when you don't understand the other person's language, it could be really frustrating, because in those moments, I didn't understand that was his love language, and it was really frustrating for me. And there were many other moments that were frustrating because I just didn't understand the way that he was expressing his love and the way that I was trying to express mine, but it wasn't being read as being expressed. Acts of service can be anything like cooking a meal, setting a table, emptying the dishwasher, vacuuming, changing the baby's diaper, picking up a prescription, filling up the gas tank, keeping the car in a good condition, paying the bills, walking the dog, dealing with landlords. Anything that needs to be done in the day-to-day life, or as I like to say, anything that needs to be adulting, that you need to do in the adult life, those are all things that are acts of service that you could do for the other person. Now imagine a couple, Tim and Tammy. We once had a story about Tim and Tammy in a previous episode. So they're just going to be my names that I use now for examples. So Tim works long hours and he brings home a really great paycheck. And Tammy works a part-time job, and then she's home with the kids. She does most of the household work, and she really wants to see her husband more. And Tim comes home late at night and she's frustrated because he came out home so late and she had to do everything by herself. And she says to him, "You don't even love me anymore. We don't go out anymore. We don't do anything anymore." He's like, "What do you mean? Everything I do for you. I work long hours because I love you." And she doesn't get that. She's like, "No, you don't. You're just addicted to your work." What's going on here? He's talking in acts of service. His way of showing his love is that he wants to work so hard in order to be able to bring to his wife everything she needs. And that's his way of expressing his love. She, on the other hand, speaks a different language. Maybe in this case, I brought an example that maybe her love language is quality time. So she's not understanding that he's telling her how much I love you. Does it mean the situation has to stay the same? No. But first we have to be aware. So let's think of a few ideas of how you can show love if your husband's way of expressing love and receiving love is through acts of service. So one thing you could do is you could serve someone or something that your spouse loves. Not only serving him, and when I say serving, it might make you think of like a servant and a master, but that's not what I mean. I think that we should all be in a mode of service in some way in our relationship, because we all want to be thinking about doing good for the others. So let's make sure that we're not going straight to associations of like servant and somebody superior to the other. That's not where I'm going, but I'm just talking about nurturing and giving. So maybe you can give to someone or something else that is dear to your spouse. For example, maybe you could do something nice or take care of your husband's parents. Maybe your husband has, I don't know, a collection of really cool plants that he loves. And if you do those acts of service also to the plants, you're also showing your love towards him. Another thing you could do when your husband is speaking in acts of service is you could acknowledge why you're doing the things. You could say, hey, look, did you see I washed the dishes? That's because I'm talking in your language now. And then he understands that you're putting so much more intention in it, and you're understanding that that's the way he understands love. You could do something with your kids when he's not home, and then surprise him when he comes home and say, hey, look at this. We did this because we love you. If he's not home, you could send a picture of some kind of service that you did and send a picture to him with a little note, because I love you. Make it, I don't know, a picture of washed dishes or folded laundry or whatever service is the most meaningful to your husband, and make sure that he knows that you were doing it intentionally, wanting to express your love in his language. Language number 2. So the second kind of language that Gary Chapman talks about is giving gifts. So gifts for many people are a real tangible show of love. When a person who speaks the love language of receiving gifts is given a gift, what he's given is so much more than just the physical object. He's given care and thoughtfulness and love and affection, and all of that comes through to that person through the gift. And there's so many different ways to give gifts. You can give gifts, either a physical gift, something that you know that the person will like. You could give a gift in a way of surprising the other person. There's so many different ways that you could give gifts. And also, it doesn't have to be something that's pricey or that costs a lot. It could be very budget friendly. And again, what they want really is something that has thought put into it, and that you took the time to really think about them and express your love in their language. So for example, what are things that you could do? Even if you're just walking outside, bring some kind of gift from your nature walk. Like, I don't know, if you find a cool flower and just bring it back, tie a little note onto it and bring that back. And again, it just symbolizes how you were thinking of them when you were out on your walk and you wanted to bring something tangible back to really symbolize how you were thinking about them. You could decide that you're doing 1 week of gifts, and every day send to your spouse or leave for your spouse in somewhere surprising every day, or maybe in a place where they're going to expect it every day of that week. Leave a small gift. You could make a list of gifts that your husband would like, and then every time you want to get him something, so then you can pick from that list that you made together. You can also, we do sometimes, even though gifts is neither of our love languages, a fun thing you could do is really use wish lists on apps on your phone. So for example, if you have Amazon on your husband's phone and you tell him to just put into his wish lists whatever it is he wants, and then you can go in and check in on his wish lists from time to time and get something that you know that he's wishing about, but you're going to surprise him when you're going to get it for him. Number 3, words of affirmation. So King Solomon says that the tongue has the power of life and death. And sometimes we don't appreciate how strong words can be. Words can be very hurtful, but if they're used in the right way, they can be so powerful, especially for someone who speaks in the language of words of affirmation. So words of affirmation can be anything of verbal compliments, words of appreciation. I like to think of them as 3 different categories that need affirmation. One is actions. The second is physical exterior, which one second I will explain. And the third are personality traits. So actions is when I see that my spouse is doing something that I really want to appreciate and acknowledge, something that they did. Complimenting on physical is how your spouse looks, what they're wearing, what they chose to dress in when you went on your date night, anything of physical exterior. And the third is personality traits, to really acknowledge and appreciate who your spouse is. I appreciate how generous you are and go into detail of why you see that they are generous. I appreciate how much you care for others. And again, go into detail about how much they care for others. Now, how can you show your love in this way? There are many different ways. Again, all these ideas are just to spark your curiosity, but really there's so many endless ways to show love in each and every one of these languages. So just some ideas here are: you can secretly make a list of things that you admire throughout the day, throughout the week. Decide how long you want to do it for, and then surprise your spouse with a written list with dates and things that you appreciate from each one of those dates that already passed, but you were appreciating and you were acknowledging throughout all that time all these things that your spouse did. You could make a collage or like a word mob. I forgot what it's called, like a picture that you smosh lots of words together. So you can write down all different personality traits that you love and you appreciate about your spouse, and then create this beautiful artwork of it, print it out, and it could be another words of affirmation to your spouse that can be displayed in your bedroom and wherever, to remind each other how much you love each other and how much you are really trying to speak in each other's language. You can surprise with small notes in surprising different places, like in your husband's briefcase or maybe even in the car. I don't know. Think about all different cool places. You could write with erasable markers, like those whiteboard markers. You could write on the mirror in the bathroom. You could write on the windows. You could write in all different places. Use words in any way to express your love. You could start an evening compliment ritual that every night before you go to sleep, you decide that you are going to each compliment the other one on something that happened that day. Again, think about ways that you could talk, write, read, share words of affirmation, words that are loving and caring. Another thing that you could do is you can create a pinned WhatsApp group between just the two of you that throughout the day or the week or whatever, you can send there compliments and words of appreciation that come up just as your day goes along. And you could decide that there has to be like 2 messages going on in that group a day. And then by the end of the day, you want to make sure that you got that in. And if you didn't, then you're going to go back and try and think, okay, what do I appreciate about my spouse today? And it might start as something kind of cheesy and kind of like, oh, come on, another one of those things. But once it becomes a habit of every day sending something that you appreciate about your spouse, it becomes such a great ritual that you are both going to want to wait for it and see, what is it that I appreciate? What is it that she appreciates about me today? And it can be something that is really, really great for the relationship. And again, with people who speak in this language of words of affirmation, it's so important to be really specific and not just say, you're so beautiful, but really say, what is it that you think is beautiful about the other person? What is it that you are appreciating in that moment? And be as specific as can be. The next love language is physical touch. Really, physical touch is a whole world. And we spoke about physical touch also in the episode with Yonina about sexuality and intimacy after childbirth. And physical touch really can have a whole, well, more than even one episode. But we're just going to say really in short here that physical touch is a way of communication. Now, physical touch has a wide array and range of ways that you could express your love. And it's very easy to do it without time or money, because it's enough to just hold hands, and it's a way of expressing love. To brush by next to your spouse and make sure that you're rubbing them as you walk by. It's so easy to get in some physical touch, and it goes from those simple gestures to all the way to physical intimacy. Physical touch is not just about the way we touch each other, but it's also understanding that the other person speaks in this touchy way. So it can also be even just buying, a different kind of material sheets for your bed. And in that way also expressing that you understand how the touch is so important for your spouse and you want to speak in that language. The last love language that Gary Chapman talks about is quality time. And quality time can be one of the really tough ones for parents, because the truth is that when I ask my clients and I ask women that I get to talk to in my work, I think that almost every woman or mother that I speak to, one of the challenges that they say that they have in their marriage since having children is that it's really hard for them to find time together. And again, if we go back to less time, less energy, less money, that makes it really, really hard to have good quality time. So before we get to even more ideas about how to express love in this language, I want to say that if you want to have time together, you need to make it happen. And here I am preaching to myself here, because it's something that is very, very difficult in the day-to-day grind. And it's so easy to push things in front of your quality time that you're going to have together. And it's so important to remember that if we don't make it, it's not going to happen. So we need to really prioritize it for everybody, and especially if that is one of your love languages. Now, make sure that the quality time is focused attention. Now, when I say focused attention, I mean that you're not sitting on your phone scrolling and doing something together. I mean that you're really focused and intentful. I don't even know if that's a word, but you're really focused on the intention of being together, on the intention of spending time together. Now, you don't have to be sitting there and gazing into each other's eyes for the whole time that you're having quality time. That's not what it means. Quality time means being together and usually doing something together, but just make sure that it's intentful. Again, there, I think I made up that word, but really time with intention to be together. In order to make this time really good and really beneficial for your relationship and as a couple, there are two things that you need to work on as a couple. And again, every couple needs to work on this, but especially if this is your language, which is working on communication, how to communicate things, and working on how to express your feelings. A few easy ways to be together and have this quality time is to make chores a bonding time. I mentioned it, I think, in one of the episodes before, that even just folding laundry can become a game, or washing dishes can become a water fight, or, like you can make things that you need to do anyways. You could turn them into really special bonding time together. But it starts with the intention of making it that bonding time together. Like, make a date. We're going to sit and fold laundry and talk about X, Y, and Z, or we are going to have a sock bowling tournament, or, make it into whatever it is, whether it's a game or a deep dive conversation, but it has to be intentional quality time. Another thing you could do together is start a hobby together, which I think I also mentioned in a podcast in one of the episodes before. So quality time is another really important one. So I'm going to go over them again. Number 1, acts of service. Number 2, gifts. Number 3, words of affirmation. 4, physical touch. And number 5 is quality time. Now, you might be hearing all of these and say, but how do I know what my language is? Because maybe you connect to more than one of those things that I say. Or how can I identify what my spouse's language is? So, great question. I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask yourself in order to try and really find what is your primary language. Now, why do I say primary language? Because you might speak in more than one language. I'll say you probably speak in more than one language, but you usually have one primary language. So how do I identify it? Ask these 3 questions. Number 1, how do you most often express your love to others? Or how does your spouse express their love to others? Do they usually want to buy a gift for other people? Do they usually want to be physically affectionate with others? Think about what are the ways that you or your spouse usually, naturally, automatically express your love to others in. Number 2 is, what does your husband mostly complain about your relationship? Is it that you don't spend time together? Is it that you're not physically affectionate or intimate together? Is it that he doesn't buy you gifts? Is it, or that you don't buy him gifts? Think about what are the things that are the most common complained about. That is usually the thing that is lacking in their love tank. And that's another way for you to be able to understand what their love language is. And the third question is, what does he request most often? If you try and think about what are the things that he requests most often, there again, you get what his love tank needs in order to be filled up. Now, I will say that my take on it is not that you only have one primary language and that's always your language. From women that I've spoken to and worked with, I think that sometimes, especially for us mothers, that I believe we're more seasonal than men maybe, which that again is another topic for a whole nother episode. But I think that it's okay to understand that we have seasons of each language. And what we need to do each time is check in and say, okay, I right now am in need of this language, and be able to express it to our spouse. And ask your spouse as well, what is it that you're in need of today? Like, what language are you talking today in this season of time? For some people, it might stay pretty much the same all the time. And for some people, especially for mothers after having a baby, for example, this is one that I meet a lot, is, for example, mothers who always thought that their love language was physical touch. And then after having kids, they felt like they were so touched out, they couldn't have any more physical touch. And things kind of changed a little bit, and that's okay. And just to be able to be aware of what my language is today and be able to express it to your spouse and be able to understand from your husband what is it that he needs at this time. And then once you're able to understand what each other's love language is, again, you'll be able to invest in the right places. You'll be able to take the resources that you do have, which sometimes we think of it as scarce, which really it's much more abundant than you think. But that again is another episode that we need to talk about that. But really, when we think of the time that we have, the money that we have, and everything that we have to invest, we need to invest it in the right places. So go to audible.com, click down below. You have a link where you can get a 30-day trial for free, and go listen to this book. Dive deep into your love languages. I will link below also a quiz that you could take to try and discover what is your love language and what is your husband's love language. And then you will be able to express and speak not only in what you think is going to help, but really speak in a love language that's going to fill up each of your love tanks and make your love blossom and flourish and just be beautiful. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to have you back here next time for our next episode. Have a great day, sending lots of loving energies out to you wherever you are. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to this episode. If this has been helpful to you in any way, please share it on with others and let's spread the love together. Also, if you want to be a part of a mama tribe where we support each other on this epic journey of motherhood and marriage, click the link in the description box below to join the new Facebook group. In this group, I'll show up for weekly lives, workshops, and we can expand on the topics we talk about here on the podcast. So click down below and I'll see you in the group.